My favorite Canadian film, something that comes to mind immediately, I would think is maybe Fubar.
Life Quantum and Rhymes for Young Ghouls.
The movie is by Mike Dowse and it's called It's All Gone Pete Tong.
Humanist vampire seeking consensual suicidal person.
There's so many, I grew up obviously watching Adam Egoyan's films. The Sweet Hereafter inspired me to be a storyteller, to be a filmmaker.
When we talk about the stories that made us, the best and the brightest from around the world, but specifically from Canada, gather right here every year for the film festival, and so we had to stop. Toronto's vibrant, Toronto's diverse, Toronto's got a ton going on. Plus, it's my home and I want to sleep in my own bed.
All right, so as a host at Much Music, CBC, and Hockey Night in Canada, I've been so lucky to experience firsthand this amazing country and so many of its storytellers.
I'll just keep moving on.
But I've always wanted to go on this journey across the country, diving deep into our stories. And if we're honest with each other, we know that this country is in complicated times, and there's a lot to focus on when it comes to our division, but there's also a lot about common bonds. So let's explore that. The invisible glue. The things that bind us together. Because our stories, right now, have never mattered more.
As we make our way across the country, we stopped in Toronto for a lot of reasons, but one was because I was invited to be a part of the launch of the biggest movie of the Toronto International Film Festival. It's the John Candy documentary, produced by Ryan Reynolds, directed by Colin and also the Candy children. So they asked me to come here and be a part of the launch.
Good morning, everyone. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hi. Hi.
For many of you who are Canadians, you know exactly what a film like this can mean, what a person like John Candy meant and still means to so many of us. John Candy, go.
John Candy might be the most definitive Canadian in show business ever.
We lost him so young. He was such an amazing comic genius.
He was the heart and soul of Second City TV.
He was human and he was our dad, and it's amazing to see it through the eyes of other people who, admire him and love him just as much as we do.
How did you aim to capture the spirit of Canada while telling John's story of his life and work?
But John is the spirit of Canada. You don't have to look for that.
You reminded me of his nickname, Johnny Toronto.
If someone sees this and says, wow, this is the spirit of Canada, this is it, that's all because of John.
The wall of influence, the waves of influence from other countries. For a while, it was the UK and, of course, the United States. Why do you think it is important for us to tell the stories of who we are as Canadians and Canadian stories?
Well, because I think Canadian stories are distinct in so many ways, and they're not distinct because they're not American.
I think it's a really critical time to highlight our performers and put them on platforms.
Especially with an American culture that is so prevalent, it's important to have our own thing.
North of North.
Schitt's Creek. And Bollywed. Kim's Convenience, for sure.
Corner Gas.
Working moms. People don't recognize how much homegrown talent we already have here. I think we need to big ourselves up.
It's true, Canada can present humble to a fault, especially with our history of producing world-class talent like Emily Hampshire and Jay Baruchel, both great actors and close friends. They dropped by my kitchen to chop it up.
A culture that doesn't see itself reflected in its own art can't rightfully be called a culture. And I think it is as elemental and vital as anything else, as education or healthcare, law and order, food, all these good things. I think art and culture is right there in there.
What are the things that make Canadian stories uniquely Canadian?
I do look to our comedy. Comedy to me is kind of the cry of the powerless a lot of the time. And our comedians do come from that self-deprecating place, and I think they really rise in that way.
Yeah. But I think we have an opportunity right now to have a more, to assert ourselves in many facets of our society.
Right.
We shouldn't be a mercantile culture that just gives our best resources out to other places to build things with.
One of the best things about the future of our storytelling is we're positioned to tell them all because so many of us are not from here.
Correct.
So the gathering of us
that
means
mosaic.
It's harder to quantify or explain sometimes, but that could be an enormous strength for us.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But that sort of difficulty of articulating just what the Canadian POV is our greatest strength. I think the appetite is vivid and vital and right there.
The Mosaic, Few shows have ever captured the immigrant experience quite like Kim's Convenience. And I'm thinking, I know someone who gets the mosaic, not just as an artist, but someone from an immigrant family himself.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, buddy. I was just walking by. I was wondering if you were in.
Yeah, no, not today.
We've been going across the country, man, talking to people about the stories that made us and all the shows that had huge impact on them. And obviously, Kim's comes up a lot. There are a lot of people who talk about what it means to them. And I know you've met a lot of people who talk about it, but I'm just curious, how does it make you feel?
It's humbling. It's very, very humbling. It's very funny. People thought it was going to be offensive at first, that it was making fun of Asian families, especially Korean families. A lot of people were really concerned about the use of accents. No. I truly believe that a lot of people initially tuned in to hate watch it. But in that, when they saw what it was about, the heart, the authenticity, even though it was so specifically Korean, it became universal and people saw themselves in it. And that is so touching and that is so gratifying.
You get the sense, too, that the accents and the specificity are why it became so universal?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that lends to the authenticity of it. I mean, we didn't water them down. We didn't make them hyper-idealistic. We didn't play the model minority sort of card where these characters could do no wrong. These were real people, drawn from lived experiences, shared experiences. They weren't hyper-idealized. They were flawed, but they were doing their best.
Good to see you, man. I really appreciate your time today.
Okay, see you.
Kim's Convenience was a big hit here and across the globe, but Canadian shows haven't always had that global spotlight. It took decades to build an industry that could get our shows to the rest of the world. And a key part of that process was Adam Egoyan, one of the OGs of Canadian film.
These are just like various things. My first feature, which made a grand sum of like $4,000 across the country. But these are the two films that broke through. So then we'll go upstairs. Wow. This is the original sign.
So the
from
opening
Exotic.
night of this movie.
Kevin Bacon as Lanny Morris in Where the Truth Lies. Amanda from Chloe. This is the poster for the duo of Colin Firth and Kevin Bacon. Yeah, like it's been such a journey.
My dad snuck me into a drive-in when I was maybe 5 years old, and we watched The Brood. I don't think I'd seen a Canadian film, and when he told me that director was from here, I was just, I couldn't even wrap my head around the fact that big movies were made by us, too.
Yeah, and why is that? See, that's so interesting, right? That, because we have this idea, I think it's because we're so influenced by American culture. Film is a different game, so you have to, at some point, think about market in a different way. You're not working for a particular language market, you're working for the English-speaking, population of your country, and they're watching American stuff at the same time. So if you find a foothold and you're able to kind of strike something, how it actually intersects to our sense of identity is really multi-layered. I just know that when you look at the body of work of culture that's come out of here, it's really distinct. We have a system here that allows us to explore certain things in a certain way, and that's a privilege. There'll always be that challenge of actually connecting to an audience, but the films are there and they're available, and some films break through. And when that happens, that's amazing.
For a story to really make an impact, it has to speak to you, the viewer. Tanya Lee Williams has dedicated her life to that, and what a career. Actor, producer, founder of Real World, that's a film fest dedicated to amplifying Indigenous and racialized storytellers. She has spent a lifetime bringing artists and audiences together.
The mainstream historically cannot create the mainstream.
Yeah.
So the subcultures do their thing, other cultures do their thing, and it gets co-opted and brought to the middle. Can you talk a little bit about that in Canadian film?
You know, I love that you said that, because I think we need to get out more and find out what is the audience interested in.
Right.
I don't think artists need to lose their vision, but I do believe that it's important for them to cater it in a way that a everyday audience is going to be interested in watching and enjoying.
Canadian TV has started to do that. You can really see some enormous successes.
Yeah.
What Jared Keeso and the whole Shoresy Letterkenny crew have done.
Yeah, and North of North.
North of North is really impactful.
Yeah, these are fun, great shows to watch.
Well, I'm glad we had this talk.
North of North, this is a comedy about life in Iqaluit. It's honest, funny, and it really pushes boundaries. This is Micah Harper. She plays Nevi in the show. Total badass. She's an actor, a writer, and loves a good bowl of pho.
You know, we're in Toronto right now.
Yeah.
And TIFF is celebrating its 50th anniversary. So much of what has happened in the business.
Yeah.
Does North of North represent what the future of the storytelling in this country could look like?
Ooh, I think North of North is in this beautiful little niche spot of showing what Canada is.
You know, we talk about the Canadian identity, and it's a strange conversation to have with somebody who would be Indigenous, but somebody who's Inuit.
That's true.
Right? It's an even different story.
Yeah.
When you think about Canadian storytelling, what do you think?
Canadian storytelling, I think now with more Indigenous voices and representation, I think it's starting to blossom into something beautiful. But it's nice to have like Indigenous representation in film and more of it. The youth are finally able to see us on the screen, themselves on the screen even. That's so profound, and I think that's gonna ignite the film and television and arts. Like there's a studio that's coming. Yeah. It's thriving right now.
Iqaluit, in terms of pace and noise, it's hard to imagine much different from Toronto than here. It embodies tradition and the future at the exact same time.
When I was here last 25 years ago with Much Music, I feel like it was half the size. A lot of conversation about the Canadian identity in the last year or so. A lot of conversation about it. Canadian TV shows and movies did you watch growing up?
I grew up watching Red Green, Turning Red, you know, Degrassi, all of my favorite shows that you've known and loved.
Degrassi Junior High. Degrassi and Caillou, for sure.
Definitely watched Beachcombers. What a world of difference Jesse from Beachcombers made to me, because other than him, there weren't that many people with brown skin.
There's not been a lot of Northern representation, but now we have North of North.
Oh my goodness, I love North of North.
Like 100% Rotten Tomatoes right away.
Showcasing some of the special, unique things that exist in the North.
So nice to see fellow Inuit, seeing my favorite people like Anna Lam, Vinny Karitak. He is amazing.
Vinny Karitak is a local legend, and you can't have a show about this place and not have Vinny in it. Today, he's offered to be our fishing guide.
What are we fishing for? What's out here?
Arctic char.
All right, Vinny, how many fish have you caught this year?
I've caught one since August, the beginning of August.
I know it's not a competition, but if I caught two.
You've doubled my score, and I'll relinquish my beneficiary card. For North of North, you know, it's really claiming our own storytelling for us, like for ourselves. And it, just because the transplants, able to be transplanted across the world, you know, is a bonus.
What does it mean to the community?
A huge sense of like a joy in being in the show, but not only that, there was pride as well. I was saying, oh, our fellow Inuit are making something for us.
She's trying not to get us too close to her secret berry stash.
It's time to meet up with another local legend. Alethea Arnica Burrill is a creative powerhouse, filmmaker, producer, activist, and co-creator of North of North. And she's also building a production studio.
North of North is for my community, but it's also very consciously for a global audience.
Right.
We wanted to paint the North as a place of warmth and connection and color and life, because that's the way we see it.
I don't think that's gonna hold.
Representation is an important issue, and it's something we have to consider at every step, but our show can't be driven from that. It has to be driven from a place of what story do I need to tell, but the story has to be driven from our hearts and character.
How do you crystallize this? Why this really does matter to be able to tell these stories from your perspective?
Film and television helps us be visible to ourselves, to our children, and to the world. And in a country that, until very recently, was actively trying to erase who we are, that's a pretty powerful form of resistance, in my opinion. So this is going to be the main studio floor down this way, and then on just this side of this door, it's going to be separated into 2 floors. As Inuit, we're used to doing the most with as little as possible.
We're talking about how the industry is changing and what is the future of Canadian film and TV, we're building studios in places like Iqaluit. That gives me a lot of hope. There's future here. That's all anybody wants, is just to go, yeah, we're here too, but that doesn't mean you're not here. That doesn't mean that your presence isn't part of our presence. It's pretty dope. The more you see the country and the more you meet people and the more you hear why things matter to them the way that they matter to them, I think it's really key to remind yourself as Canadians, especially the Canadians who see the country changing around them and don't know what to do with that. Celebrate all the stuff that doesn't look like you or feel like you or act like you. Celebrate that, because it's actually, those are actually the fabrics that make this country so rad.
We crossed Canada from coast to coast to coast to connect with you about the stories that we share. You know, Canada is a weird experiment. The people, the places, all so different from each other. But when we strive for common ideals, well, in the right ways, maybe we're not so different from each other after all. And in our world today, that's special and worth protecting. It's a nation built on ideas, held together by imagination. And you can see it come together in the stories we tell, in the stories that made us.